Mama knows, sweetheart. Some stories don't come out in screams. They slip through the cracks, between quiet dinners and colder goodbyes. Some stories we keep folded inside our hearts, not because we're weak, but because if we ever unfolded them fully, the weight might tear us apart. There are letters I've written, pages filled with the kind of truth a mother only whispers when no one's left to listen. Letters I never sent. But tonight, sweetheart, tonight I'll read one of them to you. In the hush of autumn evenings, a mother watches the leaves fall, one by one, like the promises her son once made and forgot. Have you ever stood in your own kitchen and felt like a stranger in the place you built with love? Mama has. The kitchen I used to call mine, where I baked birthday cakes, where I hummed lullabies while stirring soup. It became someone else's space. The kitchen I built was no longer mine, and neither was the boy I once called son. He sat at the table scrolling on his phone, barely looking up. And her Marcy, she folded her arms like she was guarding the sink from me. Then it came. Words that sliced sharper than any scream. Mama, you've been here long enough. We can't keep feeding another mouth. Another mouth. That's what I'd become. Not a mother. Not a woman who gave her life to raising him. Just another mouth. They didn't throw me out with cruelty. They just stopped seeing me. And somehow, sweetheart, that hurt more. Dear Caleb, Mama doesn't even know where to begin. Maybe with the night I first held you. How tiny you were. How your little fingers wrapped around mine, like you already knew I was your safe place. Or maybe with the mornings I rose before the sun, cutting fruit, folding napkins, and slipping notes into your lunchbox that said, "You're my sunshine. Love, Mama." I wonder if you ever read them, or if they just ended up in the trash, crumpled between sandwich crusts and candy wrappers. I kept everything you gave me, Caleb. The macaroni necklace from 2nd grade, the crooked drawing of our old house, the Mother's Day card where you scribble, "Best mom ever" in blue crayon. I even saved your baby shoes, the little blue ones you wore when you first toddled across the kitchen tiles. The same kitchen where I now stood, stirring soup, unwelcome in a house I once made a home. But I guess I didn't save enough for you, did I? Not enough to keep you from saying, I was just another mouth to feed. I don't know if you remember saying it. Maybe it slipped out, careless, like it didn't matter. But to me, it carved a hollow I didn't know was there. I wanted to cry, to scream, to grab you by the shoulders and say, I gave you everything I had. How did I become something you couldn't carry? But I didn't. I swallowed the words, let them settle like stones in my chest, and packed my things, one small suitcase. For a lifetime of lullabies, scraped knees, bedtime prayers, I zipped it shut, opened the front door, and walked out. No fight, no final word, not even a glance back. The porch light was still on when I left, but no one noticed the dark that came after. You didn't call, not that night, not the next week, not even when autumn turned the trees brittle and bare. And I waited for a knock, a message, a moment, but nothing came, just silence. So I write this now. Not to send, not to blame, not even to be heard. I write it, Caleb, because if I don't write this down, I'll forget I ever mattered at all. Love always. Mama. You know, sweetheart, Mama's been thinking about this for a long time. How does a son, a boy you held in your arms, fed from your own hands, grow up and look at you like you're just a bill he can't afford to pay? How does love turn into distance? How does family forget family? I read somewhere that when people feel overwhelmed, they start cutting out the things they think are extra. Not the things they love, not the things they need, just the things that feel like too much. And sometimes, darling, that means their own mother. It's not always about hate, you know. Sometimes it's about fear. The fear of not having enough, the fear of failing, the fear of seeing themselves in the eyes of the one who knows them best. Psychologists say it too. That people often lash out at the ones they think will always stay, the ones they feel safe enough to hurt, because deep down, they believe those people will never stop loving them. But sweetheart, here's the truth Mama's learned. Even the softest heart has a breaking point. Even the kindest mother has a limit. Have you ever stayed silent? Not because you were weak, but because they didn't deserve your truth. Did you ever walk away? Not because you stopped loving, but because loving them was destroying you. I used to believe love meant bending so far I almost broke in half. I thought it meant giving until there was nothing left. But love Real love. It's not about how much you can take. It's about knowing when enough is enough. And darling, if you've ever felt small, if someone you love has tried to make you feel like you're just one more mouth to feed, I want you to hear this. That's not who you are, and it's not what you deserve. Because this story, it isn't just about Caleb. It's about every mother who's ever been told she's too much. Every woman who's ever been made to feel like she's just a weight to carry, when all she ever gave was love. I left that night with nothing but a small suitcase and the sound of the front door closing behind me. Like a final word I wasn't allowed to speak, I found a small motel off the highway. One of those places with buzzing lights, thin curtains, and carpet that smelled like old rain. I sat on the edge of the bed, my coat still on, hands resting on my knees like I didn't know what to do with them. I didn't cry. Not then. I just stared at the wall for a long, quiet while. And then, as I unpacked, I found something I hadn't meant to bring. It was tucked between two old sweaters. Folded, worn, yellowed at the edges like it had been waiting. An envelope with your father's handwriting. I held it in my hands, didn't open it right away, just stared. I don't know why I hesitated. Maybe because part of me already knew. This wasn't just a letter, it was a secret. A memory wrapped in paper. A door I wasn't sure I was ready to open. But after a while, when the motel hum quieted and the night pressed in close, I finally slid my finger under the flap. And what I found inside changed everything. It wasn't just his words. It was a plan, a trust, an account I never knew existed. Not in my name, not in our family name, but hidden carefully under a company name I had never seen before. There was a contact, a number, instructions written in your father's steady hand. He knew. Your daddy. He knew the world could turn cruel, and that one day I might need something to hold on to. For a long time, I just sat there, clutching the letter, reading it again and again. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt something stir inside me. Not anger, not revenge, not yet. Just something softer. Hope didn't roar that night. It whispered. So I sat at that small desk by the window, pulled out the notepad from the motel drawer, and I wrote a second letter. Dear Caleb, you may think you've written the end of my story. You may think you've closed the door and walked away. But sweetheart, this is just the beginning. Love. Mama. I didn't call Caleb. Didn't tell him what I'd found. Didn't shout. Didn't beg. Didn't ask him to remember who I was. No, sweetheart. Mama's learned something with time. Sometimes the loudest justice comes in silence. You see, when a mother stops waiting, when she stops hoping for a knock on the door that never comes, she starts building her own door. I dialed the number in your father's letter. A man named Thomas Caldwell, an old friend from a part of your daddy's life I never really knew. I expected a machine, but he picked up after the second ring. His voice cracked like an attic door. Margaret, he said, like he'd been waiting years for me to call. And then he told me everything. Your father had set aside an investment. Nothing flashy, but enough to give me one thing I hadn't had in a long time. A choice. A way out, a way forward. I met with lawyers, quietly. No family dinners, no announcements. I opened accounts in my name, learned how to move things on my own terms. I stopped asking for permission. Weeks passed. One night, I was scrolling through properties, just passing time. And there it was. The house. Your house. The one you and Marcy thought you owned. It had a foreclosure notice, tucked at the bottom of the listing, tiny, almost hidden. I read it twice, 3 times. My hands shook, but my heart was steady. I didn't wait. I didn't wonder. I made a call. I placed a bid. And when the deed was signed, when the keys were in my hand, when the house was mine again, I sat at the lawyer's desk, the pen still warm in my fingers, the papers folded neatly in my lap. And I whispered to myself, this wasn't revenge. This was remembering who I was. I didn't raise the rent out of spite. I raised it because I could. I fixed the leaks you ignored. I repainted the walls you left bare. I repaired the porch swing, the one you let rot, but where I once rocked you to sleep. And Caleb, you started to feel it. The slow unraveling. The weight of choices you thought would never come back around. Your voice on the phone was angry, sharp, demanding. Who owns this place now? Who's behind this? But I said nothing. Let them guess. Let them wonder. Let the silence wrap around them like the very walls they once took for granted. Because Mama knows, sometimes justice doesn't wear a gavel. It wears a quiet smile. And if you're listening, sweetheart, if you've ever been cast aside, if you've ever held your truth in silence for too long, if you've ever been called too much, this letter is yours too. It wasn't long before the knock came. Late one evening, just as the sun dipped behind the trees and the shadows stretched long across the porch. It wasn't a loud knock, not the kind you make when you feel entitled to enter. No. This one was soft, unsure, the knock of a man who finally understood. The world didn't revolve around him anymore. I opened the door, and there, Caleb stood. His shoulders were slumped, his eyes dull like someone who had been chasing answers, but found nothing but mirrors. In his hand was a crumpled notice, the rent adjustment, the overdue fees, the quiet reminder that the walls around him weren't his. "Mom," he said, but his voice cracked. Not like a man, but like a boy trying to sound like one. The boy I once held through fevers, the boy who once cried when I left his room at night. "I didn't know," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't think it would get this bad." I looked at him, sweetheart. Really looked. And for a moment, I didn't see the man who called me a burden. I saw the boy who used to fall asleep on my lap. The boy who once asked me if monsters were real. I wanted to reach out, to brush his hair back like I used to tell him, "It's okay, baby, I'm here." But I didn't, because Mama's learned, sometimes silence says more than sorrow ever could. So I let the quiet fill the space between us. Let him feel the weight of every choice he had made. Let him stand there in the echo of what he never thought he'd lose. He sighed, long and low like he was deflating from the inside. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. "Why didn't you say something?" I could have told him, "Because you wouldn't have listened." Or, "Because you never asked." But instead, I just said softly, like folding a memory into a drawer, "Because sometimes, honey, the lesson has to come when you're ready to hear it." He looked down, his fingers twisting the paper until it tore. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I never meant for it to go this far. And maybe, sweetheart, that was the first honest thing he'd said in years. I didn't say I forgive you. Not then. Not yet. Because forgiveness isn't a ribbon you hand out. It's something that grows, like the roses I used to plant by the kitchen window. The ones he never noticed were blooming. So I nodded, slowly, quietly, and said, "Take care of yourself." He turned, walked down the steps, like he was carrying more than just his body, like he was carrying the silence between us. And when he was gone, I closed the door, leaned my back against it, and let the tears come. Not tears of anger, not even grief, but the kind that fall when you finally stop asking for someone else's permission to stand tall. I didn't lock it, but I didn't open it either. I didn't hear from Caleb for a while after that night. Weeks passed, then months. No more calls, no more knocks. Just quiet. And you know what, sweetheart? For the first time in a long time, that quiet didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace. I took morning walks, let the sun warm my face, sipped tea by the window, and watched the world move on without waiting on anyone's apology. I planted roses again, the deep red kind, the ones that bloom even in the cold, the ones I used to plant when you were small. And as I dug my hands into the soil, I thought of all the mothers out there, the ones who've been told they're too much, too old, too soft, too broken. And I realized, sweetheart, I wasn't the only one. There are so many women like me, mothers holding stories they never dared speak aloud, hearts full of words they folded away for years. So, if you're sitting there tonight, quietly holding your own heartbreak, Mama wants you to know. You can write to me. Yes, sweetheart, write it down. Your truth. Your letter. Send it to... The email is in the video description, sweetheart. Mama will be here, listening. Because maybe one day, your story will help another woman feel seen. Just like this one might be helping you tonight. Every mother has a truth she never told. Share yours. This space is sacred. You are not just another mouth to feed. You are not a burden. You are not invisible. You are the chapter they tried to close, but you hold the pen.